by CBS Sports Radio's morning show host of the Gio and Jones program, our good friend Gregg Giannotti. Greg, it's Zach and Chase here in Philly. Thanks for a few minutes. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Well, we're doing great. It's a little bit rainy here in Philadelphia, but it's always the city of brotherly love, so we're getting excited for the holiday weekend. That includes Passover and Easter. But we were actually on your turf earlier in the week for a little Temple and Miami NIT tournament, and we got a chance to stop by the WFAN and CBS Sports Radio studios, and we had a chance to say hello to your good friend and former boss, as you were the producer of his show, in Joe Beningo of the Joe and Evan program. And Chase got his first experience, Greg, of meeting the great Joe Beningo, and you do one of the best Joe Beningo impersonations I have ever heard. So give a little Joe Beningo to me for Chase Sr.'s ears.
Chase, what are you doing here? What, you in this place? What are you kidding me? You know this Gelb guy? You know this guy? I mean, I've known him since he was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 centimeters tall, this kid. I've known his father forever. He's the best, all the love. Just don't do anything I wouldn't do. You know what I'm saying?
That's legendary right there. Sounds just like him.
And also, Chase, if you don't know Gregg Giannotti too well, I was looking at an article 2 weeks ago, and it was the whole Tom Coughlin Siri incident where he wasn't trusting the GPS of the Siri voice, and Gregg Giannotti does a fantastic Tom Coughlin impersonation as well because he's multi-talented. So, Greg, give us a little bit. You're going to be like our Frank Caliendo for the day. Give us a little bit of Tom Coughlin interacting with the Siri.
Oh, man, I haven't done Tom Coughlin. I got to be honest with you, since like 2007 was the last time I did that impersonation, Zach. I haven't heard him in a while. I gotta skip that one. Next time, give me a request list so I can make sure I'm ready for all of them.
Make your face red like Tom Coughlin, and you're all good.
So, all right, we're joined by Gregg Giannotti of CBS Sports Radio. Do a little Final Four talk. Greg, we've had on a lot of good guests during the NCAA tournament, including Seth Greenberg, Dick Hoops Weiss, and a big question that we've asked them: if you had one active coach in the month of March to pick to win one NCAA tournament game, who would it be? I'll give you some of the answers that we've got. Seth Greenberg said Izzo or Pitino. Hoops said John Calipari. Chase said Coach K, and I said Tom Izzo. Who would be the one coach that you take?
I think Izzo pops into mind just because of what we've seen happen this particular tournament, because he said himself that he never thought that this group was going to amount to much, at least in Michigan State basketball standards, and he's gotten so much out of them. And you look at the other teams, you see a lot of talent. Now, you don't want to take anything away from those coaches, whether it's Bo Ryan or Calipari or Coach K, because they've got great talent, because there's teams that have great talent that never amount to anything, and sometimes it's harder to coach those guys that are much heralded. But to me, Tom Izzo, because every single year, I mean, whether you're talking about that team as a 1 or 2 seed or a 4 seed or a 7 seed, like this year, he seems to get the absolute most out of his guys. So I probably lean towards him with a nod to knowing how hard it is for the other guys to have that talent and still get the most out of them.
Like I said, I'd take Izzo just because he finds a way, and I haven't picked against him once in the month of March this year. Now we're in April, so I will pick against him going up against Duke, but I don't like to count Tom Izzo out. Tell me how Michigan State has a chance to beat Duke, because on paper I think Duke's the better basketball team.
Yeah, it's tough for me to say that right now, and basically anybody who's picking Michigan State is just saying, well, look, how many times did you pick Michigan State to win in the tournament so far? And they figured out a way. To me, I can't give you those reasons on the court why I believe that Duke could lose this game, because I like him so much. I mean, the way that Coach K talks about Quinn Cook and talks about his guys, this group is a special group. And when I think that, let's say Okafor doesn't have a great night, then Justice Winslow, as you saw in the Elite Eight game, he's grabbing rebounds, he's hitting big shots, he's doing something, even though they're not deep. And then Coach K only rotates about 8 guys and that's basically their team, and they get in foul trouble, then they have some real issues. This is a group that is incredibly strong in all aspects. So I guess the one reason would be, if Duke ends up getting into some foul trouble, Coach K's got to go to some guys he's not used to going to, because the depth isn't there of a normal Duke team, and Michigan State can take advantage of that. But I think Duke is far too talented to lose in this particular game.
Gregg Giannotti is our guest right now, WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. This is the main event with Zach Gelb and Chase Sr. Greg, Kentucky going for the historic undefeated season. It would be one of the greatest feats in sports history. You're Bo Ryan. I'm going to give you a suit. You lace up. How are you beating Kentucky, and what's your game plan if you're Wisconsin?
Well, basically, I think that you can't try to do anything but play the best game that you can when you go in there. Because I think some of the problems that coaches run into is, right, we have to try to slay the dragon as opposed to playing to their strengths. And I think that Wisconsin is one of the few teams, if not the only team in the country, that if they play their best game, they can actually beat Kentucky. We saw that with Notre Dame coming up just a little bit short, and a couple of real key missed free throws there in the last 4.5 minutes of that game that allowed Kentucky to come back. But the way that they can play offensively, the way that they can pass the ball around, the way that they can score, and also make it tough matchup-wise for those bigs of Kentucky, even though they play great defense, and you can't take anything away from that group defensively. It's basically the one thing I would try to do if I'm Bo Ryan is create mismatches with Sam Decker. Find a way to get him open, get the ball in his hands, and just hope that he has a great night. Other than that, just do what they're doing because they're such a great offensive team. They play great in the clutch. Every test that they've been given late in games and close games, they haven't blown a lot of teams out in the tournament. They play a lot of close games. You go back to the first game, Coastal Carolina, who cares in a 116 matchup, but it's not like Wisconsin been flexing their muscles. So I trust them down the stretch in some of these games. So if you're seeing a 5-point lead with 5 to go with Wisconsin, I can see them closing that game out because that's what they do. So to me, the one thing that Bo Ryan's going to need to do is exploit any sort of mismatch you could have there and try to get Sam Decker creatively open because you're going to need him in the biggest way in this game.
And that's the thing that really sticks out about Kentucky is that they might not play their best brand of basketball, but in the game's most crucial moments, that's when they buckle down and become so mentally tough. I'm going to put some money in your lap. You're a betting man. Does Kentucky go down to Wisconsin, or do you see the Cats prevailing in that one?
I think Kentucky wins. I mean, and I really wish that I could feel stronger about Wisconsin because it's just been sort of ho-hum picking these games and going through them and saying Kentucky's going to win. It's so cliche, but I just really believe it. And this is a group that I don't know if seeing Notre Dame, the way that they play basketball, their ability to score is necessarily going to help them that much against Wisconsin. But I think what helps them from that scare that they have is the fact that they were given another test that they passed. And this is a group that has done that consistently, whether you're talking about the 2 overtimes with Texas A&M, whether you're talking about the LSU game, the Notre Dame game, and they proved it again. If they were coming off another West Virginia-type blowout that they had, and then all of a sudden Wisconsin's in their face that next week, I would worry a little bit there. But to me, they're too strong, they're too great defensively, they're too long. It's a mismatch of epic proportions for most teams, and it's only just a slight mismatch against a team like Wisconsin.
If Kentucky's able to win these next 2 games, which I think they will, to me they're going to be the NCAA champions. They're just too good defensively. They're too long. They're too athletic. For me to see any team goes down, I guess Wisconsin has a chance if they shoot unconsciously from 3. However, if Calipari's able to run the table, what does this do for his legacy?
Well, it's one that, of course, going undefeated in this climate and this different world of college basketball is a lot more impressive than it was all the way back in 1976 with that Indiana team because, I mean, you haven't seen it. And you haven't seen it for a reason because it's so difficult to do with one-and-dones and so on and so forth. So Calipari has mastered that. I think what it does to his legacy is he now becomes the best coach of this era, and he's got on a resume that he's been able to change college basketball in a way. I always think, though, much like with Belichick and some of the stuff that's happened in his past, that everybody's going to respect the greatness, but they're also going to bring up things that have happened at previous places. And, you can't ignore leaving UMass and then the Candy stuff happening in the sanctions. You can't ignore leaving Memphis, and then right after that we're talking about Derrick Rose and sanctions. Now, we haven't heard anything with Kentucky. You don't expect to hear anything. That stuff's going to follow him around. But the Calipari haters are always going to hate him. And they'll find a way to discredit this. The ones who respect him and like him, that will just add to it. But there's no denying that 40-0 The way you have to recruit, get these guys together. And you got guys to come back. You got the Harrison twins back. You got Willie Cauley-Stein coming back. To keep that together and go on a championship run and go undefeated, I don't know how you can disrespect that in any way.
Yeah, sanctions or not, Calipari has just done a fantastic job throughout his entire career. So we talk about Calipari, Greg, but let's look at this Kentucky roster. To see three guys who are on the floor at the same time, who are all 7-footers, running up and down the floor, offensively and defensively like guards, is just absolutely ridiculous. And then you have the aforementioned Harrison twins as well. This roster of the college teams that you've seen, is it one of the better ones, or does it just come down to Calipari doing such a good job coaching these guys up to become the team that they are right now?
Yeah, I do believe it's a little bit of both. I mean, it's one of the best teams. I'm happy to not say it's one of the best teams you've ever seen at this point, talent-wise. I mean, it is. A guy like Karl Anthony Towns, watching him get better throughout the season is such a scary thing. And that's what he's been able to do with some of these freshmen. They come in, they're raw, they're talented, everybody knows they're some of the best players in the country, and then they continue to grow in his system around other great players. So to me, it's a lot about talent. It's a lot about coaching. But yes, this is one of the most talented teams I've ever seen. But I mean, if you put it's not like you could just substitute any head coach in there and all of a sudden this team's going to go 40-0. Steve Masiello, who won a championship at Kentucky, he's now the head coach at Manhattan. They were in the first four. They lost to Hampton and went on to lose to Kentucky. We had him on as a guest, and it was his opinion, and he's a guy who's done it, that it's much harder to work with guys that have been told they're the greatest players in the country since they were, like about 10 years old. So in order to get the best out of them is a tricky thing, and you're right about those guys running up and down the court like gazelles. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns to me is one of the most incredible physical specimens out there. I like him a little bit better than Okafor coming out of the draft, too.
I agree with you. Gregg Giannotti of CBS Sports Radio is our guest, WHIP Radio in Philadelphia, the host of the Gio and Jones program each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, from 6 to 9 a.m. on CBS Sports Radio. I have to throw you one Eagles question to you because you are a national sports talk show host. Do you understand what Chip Kelly is doing? What is the feel nationally about Chip Kelly?
I think the feel is that there's enough respect there from his days at Oregon and what he did in year one there in Philadelphia to give him a chance. And I think that a lot of people looked at the Sam Bradford trade as the one that was a little bit on the head-scratching side. I don't think that this DeMarco Murray deal is something that should have garnered as much celebration as it did. I think that because it was the Eagles stealing a player away from the Cowboys, and it was a guy who had a remarkable season last year statistically, that it kind of got a little bit overblown. But DeMarco Murray stayed healthy twice in his entire running back career. We're talking about college football and the NFL. One was right before he got drafted, and another was right before he got a contract. So, sometimes it raises an eyebrow. But I think for the most part, the initial reaction was, whoa, what are you doing? And then as pieces settled in, it was like, I kind of like this. It's given us a little bit of juice, and I'm going to see how this thing plays out and give him the respect. But everybody knows that he's not going to get so much leeway if this 2015 season doesn't go the way that he and everybody in Philadelphia wants it to go.
What the DeMarco Murray signing did, and I'm not trying to undervalue it because I think it's an upgrade at the running back position when you compare it to Shady McCoy, was it got the fans off life support, which you were kind of saying. I still don't see how this team got better at offense, though, overall, because there's still holes at wide receiver. You have a hole at the interior guard spot, and then the quarterback in Sam Bradford hasn't been able to stay healthy. And the thing that scares me is that Bradford plays all the 16 games this year. The Eagles give him a big contract, and then he continues to go back to his injury past. Chip Kelly says Sam Bradford is his man. Marcus Mariota is in the draft. The Eagles could possibly trade up. I don't know if that's going to happen. Who's the Eagles quarterback next year?
I think it's Bradford. I really do believe that. I don't think you can undersell the Shermer stuff either, and him being there when he excelled. And when you say, if he stays healthy for 16 games and they end up paying him, and then he ends up tearing an ACL. That's a situation you like to be in, though. And I know that it's easy to sit here and say, well, Sam Bradford's going to get hurt again. But if you see him go out there and lead the Eagles to a division title, and he's healthy, and he's great, and he's back to that player that won the Offensive Rookie of the Year back in 2010, then you're saying, hey, you got to lock this guy up, but what a genius Chip Kelly is. So I know we tend to get ahead of ourselves as sports fans, but if he puts together a healthy, full season as a starting quarterback, this team goes to the playoffs. I think that everybody would be more than willing to keep him around for a couple more years.
Greg, last one before we let you run. Here in Philadelphia, talk on the radio has just been dominated by the potential Marcus Mariota deal. Callers are calling in and hosts are talking about potential deals and structuring all of these trades to possibly move up. Is that something that's being talked about remotely at the national level, or is that just something that's happening locally here?
No, it definitely is, but I think that people believe Chip Kelly that they're not going to trade away the draft to go up and get him. And they believe that if their draft position was a little bit different, or if Mariota would, is any chance of him slipping, then maybe it'd be more of a realistic thing. So I think people have cooled off on it and now looked, all right, where is he going to go? Is he going to go to the Tennessee Titans? Is he going to go to the New York Jets? Is Mariota and the link to the Washington Redskins a real thing? So I think more nationally it's moved on from, wow, Chip Kelly's lurking in the weeds a little bit, and we wouldn't rule it out completely, but I think some of these other teams make a little bit more sense. And quite frankly, I don't know if I love him as an NFL quarterback. You talk to a lot of scouts and see what they say, and they love the makeup of the guy and everything else, but how many NFL throws are on his resume, and is it a system thing? I don't want to completely count the guy out, but sometimes I lean towards the fact that, give me a guy who looks and throws the ball like Jameis Winston any day over someone who's throwing to wide-open wide receivers, because the offense has confused the hell out of the defense.
Gregg Giannotti, you're absolutely phenomenal on the show today. But real quickly, before we let you run, I'm a big Patriots fan. Give me Beningo on that final play of the Super Bowl 2 months ago.
Oh, you kidding me? You got this guy Lynch, right? Who cares if he doesn't say anything to the media, right, bro? Who cares? I don't care about that. You give him the ball, the guy's your best player. You give him the ball. We're coming back after this, 877-337-6666.
Stellar job, bro. We appreciate it. All the love.
Thanks, Greg.
All right.